Welcome to Office Hours, where we come and assemble every day and answer your media and tech-related production questions. Courtney Gooden in Los Angeles is our reader today. So, Courtney, what's our first question?
Well, the first one up is from Mr. Guy Cochran. Is this a Cochran? He asks, Bitfocus Buttons now has a free tier. Can I show something cool that you can do with it?
Is that just me, or am I seeing a different question?
You're somewhere different.
Yeah, I'm seeing a J.J. Kester question from Glendale, California.
You're right. I was on the wrong tab. I'm sorry. J.J. Kester from Glendale. Guy, well, that's a coming attraction. Okay.
There you go.
Exactly. You can think about that one for a little while.
Yeah. Promo.
Taste of what's to come. All right. J.J. Kester in Glendale, California asks, it seems that the terms BNC and SDI are used interchangeably. Can you articulate the difference?
I would imagine Chris Fenwick is going to be doing exactly that. Chris, dive in.
Later in the show, Guy's going to throw himself a Cochran. There are whole web pages dedicated to what BNC actually means, and I think the only person I'd really trust is probably Courtney. I bet you Courtney knows the answer what BNC stands for. So BNC is the connector, JJ, and SDI is the signal that comes over that cable. BNC connectors get used for plenty of different things, SDI just being one of them.
Alex Lindsay.
and there are different impedances, so it's not all BNC cables can carry SDI. So 75 ohm for SDI, 50 ohm for wireless, connecting your RF stuff. So that it's not BNC is a physical layer, and what goes over it, but they're not all the same. There's 50, 75, 93. So when you say SDI cable, when I say SDI cable, I mean a 75 ohm BNC. Because if I just say BNC, someone might hand me a 50.
And
there you go.
I also want to mention that what is happening currently with the USB 3, which might be Thunderbolt is not. Just as confusing as what BNC used to be, because a BNC cable could be used for so many different things. Standard definition video, HD video, SDI, radio, antennas, blah, blah, blah.
Now, the one thing I will say is that Thunderbolt is different than the USB-C world is a mess. The Thunderbolt world is not a mess because it's always labeled. You always know that
but it's
you're
on the same connector.
And you know what
messy.
Thunderbolt because it's all that by the Thunderbolt standard is that the label that it's
but it's a silk screen and it can wear off. So
you're not using
always is a superlative that I would never.
You're not holding it right.
You're not holding it right if it wears off.
Chris name checked Courtney, so we're going to go to Courtney and see if he can clear this up for us. Courtney?
All right. Well, BNC is just a description stands for bayonet connector, which means it's got two little pins on the female side and two little slots on the male side that they go in and twist and lock. They're twist lock type connectors. They come in 50 ohm, 75 ohm, and other ohms, 110 ohm. There are differences. The outsides are usually the same size except for the mini BNCs, but the inside pins and the dielectric that's around them and the little metal that surrounds that dielectric changes. It's different between 50 ohm and 75 ohm, and you can plug them in, and the pin sizes are slightly different between the two. So make sure you get the right kind of BNC connector. SDI is a serial digital interface, which is the format of the signal that's traveling down the wire. It's not a connector design. So SDI can go over many types of different connectors, although usually they're on some type of 50 ohm or 75 ohm BNCs.
Ohm, sweet ohm. Guy Cochran, add your 2 cents.
Yeah, if somebody says, hand me a BNC cable, it can be any of those as described, 50 or 75. I've seen where some 50 was installed in a venue where we tried to pass HD SDI signal. So as Courtney said, SDI is serial digital interface. So that's a digital signal traveling down what could be an analog cable, especially 50. And so there's different versions of these transport mechanisms that will or will not pass. So there's also SD-SDI, there's HD-SDI, and then there's the different variations of 3G, 6G, 12G as to how much of that data rate can pass through. So 3G SDI over that same BNC cable, maybe on a short run, you could get it to pass. But sometimes on longer runs, you need to guarantee that cable. So when somebody says, hand me a BNC cable, and you give them a 50 ohm one that's just out of some hand-me-down cable or something like that, it may not pass that 3G or 6G, definitely not 12G. I mean, if you're trying to do a long run, like a 4K 60 run, it's not gonna go very far. And so that's where sometimes you might see somebody say, hand me a DA or hand me like an AJ distribution amp that will boost up that signal, but then that has to reclock and that will cause delay up down that. So you got to be careful when somebody just says, hand me a BNC cable, unless you know what it is. And you could look at the side of it and you could see it's imprinted on the cable itself, RG50. As long as you have a long enough piece and it's not worn off, you can see what that kind of cable is. So you want to get good cable and good ends.
And in the chat, very many of the things that I've heard traditionally through my years in the business are appearing in the chat. British naval connector, I've heard that one. Bayonet Neil Councilman, I haven't heard that. I think the absolute truth may be a little bit lost in history, but there's a lot of possibilities here. Alex?
I actually do believe it's the Bayonet Neil Councilman, and that is from Paul Neal in Bell Labs and Carl Councilman of Amphenol. And they're the ones that created the connector in the mid-1940s, if you're wondering how old that connector is. So it's a pretty old connector that we have there, but you definitely have to pay attention. Like one of the things that I do is I put the rear twists on our SDI cables, the 75 ohm, and I just buy regular connectors for, if it's 50 ohm, I make sure that we don't do that. Like if it's 50 ohm, we use the very standard kind of more old fashioned setup so we have to look at it, because for almost everything that I have, they're almost always we've terminated almost all of them ourselves, and so we know what we're looking at. But that ohm, it's really a pain to try to test those, and so you definitely don't want. And where you typically see 50 ohm, you shouldn't ever use for SDI at any length. I mean, you can use it for 3 feet. 75 ohm, as Guy said, it depends on what it's rated for, and it's really quality of components. So it's not like it's different. It's just that it's how it's built. To make that happen, everything is 12G at 3 feet. like you can do anything at 3 feet, and really you can get away with 12G at 10 to 15 to maybe even 20 feet on almost any cable that you grab. After that, things start to fall apart pretty quickly. We've definitely bought cables that said they were 12G. And they're 100 feet, and you have to be super careful. Once you get to like 80 feet, 100 feet, anything more than that, you have to be super careful, or you're not going to it's not going to cleanly get to the other side.
Jason Beisch.
Alex is absolutely correct. The AV audio video installers cable reference says that Bayonet Neil Councilman is the right thing, and it refers only to the end. So there is, I guess, no BNC cable, just a BNC termination.
You could do cable with BNC, but there you go. Be precise.
There's not many shows where we'll spend 8 minutes talking about BNCs. I just want to say we're kicking off the show with some serious geekdom.
Deep dive.
We're going to get canceled.
Wait until someone asks a question about gaff tape again.
Oh, God. We'd be here for hours.
Exactly.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Zach asks, what is the difference, or what is the device or software that has been discussed on the show before that allows primary and secondary internet connections and immediately fails over to the secondary connection if the primary goes down?
Guy Cochran's going to start us out here. Guy?
Yeah, I missed the pre-show, but I'll talk about and show two of the different ones that are available. One is Speedify if you want to use software, and that's even being used in some hardware now that our friend Keenan's showing it with the Miri piece of hardware that uses Speedify to bond and to fail over. I'm going to show you real quick the back end of the Ubiquity Dream Machine. So in here you have the ability on your WAN to have two. So you can see that I have Comcast cable on port 9, and I have Ziply Fiber 10 gig connection on SFP1, and that is on what they call a primary and a backup. But you can see that the checkbox here for the WAN mode is failover only. The other one is load balancing. So this, as you can see here, it'll distribute the traffic. And I have mine on failover, but one of the things that I do use is what's called a policy-based route. And this, I call these off-production devices. So like when my grandson comes over and he's using his his name's Aiden. You can see he's using his Meta Quest there. I could bump him over to the secondary connection, so he's not even touching my 10 gig connection whatsoever. So there's other things that you can do with these more advanced tools if you want to spend. It's not that much money, $500 for a Unify Dream Machine Pro, and you get these kind of things that allow you to fail over gracefully. And I've done it in the middle of a Zoom call just to see what would happen, and pulled it, and it failed over just fine. It hiccuped just a little bit, but it failed over pretty gracefully.
Jason Beisch.
Yeah, the feature that you're referring to is failover, and I will say pretty explicitly that you need a completely separate ball of wax in order to do that seamlessly. If we're talking about a live video upstream, a live view, or something along those lines, but I'll leave the rest to our esteemed remaining panelists in the question.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, the one that I've talked about in the past. I mean, there's a couple of different. Pepwave will do it. Ubiquity will do it. The one that I've used the most is Meraki's. Most of our Meraki's have a primary and a backup that would drop over. So if you're talking about what were we talking about in the past, I might have talked about that. Mickey says that it's just an enterprise grade gateway, which is true. Just almost any gateway that is enterprise grade will be able to have a primary and a backup WAN. The big thing is how long it takes to get from one to the other. Generally, you don't want it to be seamless because otherwise it starts going back and forth. You can bond them. I'm not a big fan of bonding. I think it adds latency and jitter. And so I try not to, I don't use anything for my internet that bonds, because I'll use it for live use to send video with lots of latency. But otherwise, I want it to be on one internet connection and then the other internet connection. And usually there's a second or two between the two as it gets through, because otherwise it would be constantly going back and forth if something went wrong.
Chris Fenwick.
You know what I learned from this question? Guy has 10 gig internet at his house, and he won't share it with his grandson. You should check yourself, Guy. You need to talk to somebody.
It's
on the plus side, these current scores of his son's gaming are not getting into his big meetings. So that's
only during a production I'll kick him over to the other side. So I'm nice. I let him enjoy the 10 gig and 1 millisecond of latency, but sometimes I just got to kick him off.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Cape Town, South Africa. Alec Peterson asks, "Hi, a reference to my question on Friday. I applied graphics to my up and downstream keys after testing it today. Why does my graphics, lower thirds, and logos still show on my clean feed? Does downstream not prohibit it?"
Alex Lindsay's going to fix this for you. Alex.
If you're applying graphics to your up and downstream, the graphics that are in your upstream are going to get burned into it. So it's only the graphics in your downstream keys are the ones that are not seen. It's not like it prohibits it. That's a very strong word, prohibit. It is the downstream keys sit on buses that don't share where your main video feed is, and so they get combined right before it goes out to program. Clean is allowed to go through. So think of like two layers on top, or a layer on top that is sitting above your clean feed. There's two layers, and they get combined for program, and they don't get combined for clean. But the upstream key, as soon as it's applied, it's immediately in the video stream. so it immediately drops into that. So you want to, but it's not really a prohibit or not prohibit. But if you're using upstream keys, then anything in the upstream key will be burned into your clean feed. The downstream keys should not, if they're being in your clean feed, then it's not a clean feed, or you're not in the downstream key, because that is the design for the downstream keys, is to not be included in the clean feed.
Jason Beisch.
I'm going to say exactly the same thing, but a little bit differently. Upstream key occurs prior to video and processing, and downstream key occurs after video and processing, and that's where your clean feed occurs at the time of video of your processing. That's the long and the short of it.
Next, we have a slightly familiar question. Next question.
J.J. Kester from Glendale, California says, "I'm getting pretty deep into the antique stereo photography and will start doing presentations on the topic soon. I'd like to discuss how Apple Spatial differs from traditional stereo capture. And what do I need to know?" I think
you're in luck, because Alex Lindsay has dived deeply into this and has props.
I have props. So this is probably what Jesse's talking about. This is And this is the way the way they used to do it. This is actually a pretty old one.
Stereopticon.
Yeah, and so this basically has the two stereo images, and then you can and then you just look through here and you see it in stereo, and it works. So it is similar to this, what Apple's doing. What Apple's doing that's slightly different is, I'm gonna put this down carefully because it's old and not very strong. So what Apple's doing differently than that is that they have the two images. They're capturing those two images. One thing is that the interaxial distance between them is not very far. So the average interaxial distance in your eyes ranges between 50 and 75 millimeters. The immersive camera is about 64 millimeters. Average is in the 64, 65 millimeter range. So, but I believe that the Apple the phone is doing, I want to say 15 millimeters. I think that, so it's much closer together. That makes it more comfortable to look at, but the stereo effect isn't quite as strong. So they're a little closer together. Then the next thing that happens how the phone works is that it takes those images and it creates what's called an MV-HEVC. And so it takes the left eye. The left eye is what's called the hero eye, and some people call it hero eye. The right eye is metadata that says this is what's different from the left eye. Because they're close together, it can say there's a lot of stuff here that's the same, and this is what's different from, this is the delta, the difference between it. And that makes it a much more efficient file to hold on to. So then that goes out. Now, what's interesting about the MV-HEVC is when it arrives at your, at a headset or something like that, it can simply unwrap it. But if you don't have a way to watch it that way, so if you don't have stereo, it'll just show you the left eye. So it just throws the right eye away. So that way you can deliver the same video to someone's phone, iPad, computer, and Apple Vision Pro. And the people in Apple Vision Pro see stereo, everyone else sees 2D, and it looks perfect in both environments. So that's the advantage of the MV-HEVC. That's there. Now, you can convert that into two eyes. So, for instance, if you take your MV-HEVC and throw it into compressor, you have to do two exports. Export left eye, export right eye, and it will give you two whole eyes that you can then do whatever you want with them. I do that a lot because I convert them to some other 3D stuff that I'm doing. And so that's another way to kind of manage that.
Courtney?
That's curious. I was going to ask Alex. I didn't know this before you just mentioned it. The MV-HEVC only, for the right eye, only encodes the parallax data that is revealed by the off-axis.
It's only the pixels that are different than the left eye.
So all the ones that are just shifted but not invisible in the other eye are just duplicated. They pull from the right eye and shift them over. Then
the metadata carries all the things that make the right eye different from the left eye. And so as long as you keep that data together, and it makes it a much more efficient file, and it also means you can deliver it to 2D and 3D devices all at the same time.
And also Apple Spatial also is a display technology that lets you position things after the fact in your 3D field of view, right? So it allows you to position a screen, let's say, over the couch or right in front of you.
I don't know if I would define that. I mean, I don't know if I would define that as Apple Spatial, and maybe it is. I wouldn't define it that way. The hard part is there's so many. There's the AR tools that Apple builds, which does do a lot of that depth mapping. Then you have Spatial, which is typically these 16:9 stereo.
Word for 3D, stereo.
Well,
stereo
and then you have, but the reason it's important to know what the nomenclature is when you're watching an Apple event is because they all mean something to Apple. so there's AR and there's 3D, and then there's Spatial, which is video that is 16:9 left and right, and then there's immersive, and immersive is when it wraps around you. So if you're 180 degrees stereo, you're now in an immersive. So immersive, spatial are two very different things in the Apple world about what that actually means.
Okay.
Interesting discussion. Well, let's go to our next question.
You may have heard this before, but Guy Cochran has a question from Seattle. And he says,
Rebound.
This is Bitfocus now has a free tier that can I show something cool that you can do with it?
Where Cochran is throwing a live demo, Cochran. These are rare, so enjoy this. Guy, dive in.
Yeah, I was playing around last night because they announced at IBC that there's now a free tier. So Bitfocus Buttons.
Hope you got muted there, Guy.
Something happened.
There we go. the the thing is, with the paid version, it was costing like $12 a month, and then if you wanted to do more things, it would cost even more. So I just killed it. I just stopped playing with it. But last night, I was like, hey, it's free again. Let's dive back in. So one of the things that I loved about it the first time that I played with it was that you could take presets. So like on an ATEM, you could just drag and drop, and it would populate a bunch of buttons. Actually, let me just show you that part real quick. So I'm going to show you two things. This will be a double. So let me just save this part real quick. So if you have a StreamDeck 32, or even if you don't, you can build stuff like this. But here's the presets where you could just grab like transitions, and you could grab the whole thing and throw in all these at once. So it just made all those buttons. So that's one of the cool things about Bitfocus Buttons. But one of the things that I wanted to show you guys that is very interesting is that now they have something called workflows, and in this node pool, there's one called a scheduler. So for like my church, we have a 9 o'clock start stream. And if you wanted to start the stream automatically, because sometimes somebody's sick, or if I was out camping and I had to have somebody else do this for me to start the stream, this scheduler would allow you to fire off anything that's in an ATEM. So check this out. Once you say that the scheduler starts at a certain time, so you could say like 9 a.m. on whatever day of the week, then you can say, do this action. And so with this device here, this connection is called the Blackmagic ATEM. So this is my ATEM Extreme. And look at all the actions that are in here. So I could also say record, start, stop. There's adjust audio. So I could even trigger off upstream keys. I could say do this play out first, like play out a countdown. But I tested this last night and actually let it start the stream and stop the stream as well. So I put a stop at a minute later just to see what would happen, and it fired off. It actually works. So for free, this is just amazing. So I know it's been a question in the past here in Office Hours, how do you start and stop a stream? And people are like, oh, use these macros and whatnot. This is Bitfocus Buttons, and it's now free. You just plug in. I think you still have to plug in a physical StreamDeck for it to work, but I'm not positive on that part. But it is just amazing that this kind of control is in here, because now you can say, start this show, but start 5 minutes before with the 5-minute countdown, start on this camera preset, the wide shot, cut to camera 2. It's just mind-boggling, this stuff that you could do for free now. Because back in my day, this was very expensive.
Very cool. We were
demo.
here for the Double Pump Live Cochrane. I'm very excited to have been here today. Thank you, Guy. Next question.
Next one comes in from Chautauqua, New York, and Zach Stahl-Smith, who asks, I'm beginning to work with Adobe Premiere Pro. What tips or tricks are helpful in this process?
Alex Lindsay's going to dive into this. Alex?
Consider Resolve. I don't understand. So I will tell you, Zach, I'm sorry for being so point blank about it, but I don't know. I understand why people still use Premiere. Like, they use it, they know it. There's like quick keys and everything else. And I know that some people think that somehow they're going to do something in Hollywood or something, and they want to use Premiere. And I understand why people use Final Cut, because it's really fast and you can just hack things. I still use Final Cut for something. I use it for. I've become obsessed with cinematic mode, so I use Final Cut for that. So I understand Final Cut. I don't understand Premiere. It is expensive. It is a monthly payment. It is not as good as Resolve in any way, shape, or form. Like, I guess if you're going to integrate it with Photoshop and After Effects, maybe. But there's a lot of those tools there. It is. I don't get it anymore. Like, I got it a year or two ago, but you have to understand that the Resolve team is 10 times larger than the Premiere team. If you're starting, this is not going to end well. Like, if you're starting, by the time you get good at Premiere, Resolve is going to be so much further past Premiere that you're going to wish that you had just started in Resolve in the first place. So there's no way that Adobe can keep up with what Blackmagic's doing. Like, you just have to understand the trajectory of how this is all going to turn out. Like, and so if I was starting something and learning something, I would definitely not use. I would definitely not use Premiere. So anyway, that's all I got to say.
Guy Cochrane.
Unless you have a specific use case, Yeah, I'm mostly a Resolve guy, but the Premiere Pro growing files with NDI is very slick. So you could actually drag and drop. If you're NDI recording, you could drop a growing file in there and you could start grabbing and cutting right away. So there are certain things that haven't been implemented yet into Resolve just because Premiere's been around for so long. And there's some other little tips and tricks. If you come from like a Final Cut world, there are some keyboard shortcuts and whatnot. But I believe in Resolve, there's the same thing where you can grab those keyboard shortcuts from another operating system. But if you're just beginning, then you probably don't have that legacy history.
Chris Fenwick's going to weigh in. Chris?
If I was starting a business today, if I was starting my career today, and I've been doing this for 40 years, Zach, and Final Cut wasn't available, I would choose Resolve for the same reasons that Alex said. I still think anything that gives you the possibility of clip collision is infuriating in the 21st century, but that's why I use Final Cut. And so, what I would really, you're asking for tips and tricks. The best tip and trick is to not use it. If for no other reason, like what Alex said, it's really expensive. It's really expensive. It adds up.
Alex?
Yeah, and to go back to answering your actual question, sorry, not that we have an opinion about this, but it is, like I do find the amount that I will say that what underlines all of this is the subscription amount is I find repugnant, like the amount that they're charging for Premiere and After Effects. So I just feel like we're being used like by Adobe. And so I still have Photoshop. I don't keep the other ones unless I need them. I turn them on, turn them off when I need something and I don't use them because I'm tired of that model. So but what I will say is if you're trying to learn it, the best learning tool right now is to start doing a project and open up ChatGPT and ask questions. Premiere's got lots of documentation in the world, and that means you will have almost any, like the way I learn Resolve, anything new in Resolve is I sit there with ChatGPT open, and I go, how do I do this? How do I do this? That didn't work. This did it. It's not always right, but about 80-90% of the time, it's going to tell you the way to do very complex things, and it'll literally give you a step-by-step on how to do it. So the best way to learn is to take an actual project and just start doing it and asking questions as if there was a person next to you that could answer all the questions that you had. And again, ChatGPT is not perfect, but I find that way faster than watching tutorials. Like tutorials the only tutorials I'll watch are Ripple training and I'll skip through random YouTube videos, but those are the only ones that I watch on any apps. And then after that, it's just ChatGPT.
And I find myself in the odd position of a little bit defending Premiere only because there's a lot. I know that seems weird. This will be a highlight day for some people. Anyway, there are a lot of people editing out there and a lot of people in corporate environments who must use the tools that they are suggested or specifically told. In fact, my wife went to work for a broadcast news station, and their newsroom for the small clips they're on Adobe Premiere. So that's what she has to use. You often don't have a choice. So my suggestion is there's so much information out there. There are Reddit forums where you can talk to live people. I think Alex's suggestion of using ChatGPT to get navigational things and to go here to find this is an excellent solution if you're comfortable working in that kind of mode. And all of them will get the job done. That's the one thing I remember after all of this. A lot of us prize things that are in particular software packages. You'll drag Final Cut away from me from my cold, dead hands only because I built so much structural knowledge of things like the database that's attached to it and keywords and things like that, that's what enables me to be efficient in it. But that's not necessarily going to be true for you. And so we wish you luck, Zach. We hope you have a smooth and easy transition and can get your work done, because that's the bottom line in all this is getting your work done. Let's go to the next question.
Next one comes in from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Andy asks, what makes a good production book? What data do you include? Names, roles, contacts, agenda?
What an excellent question. I don't think we've talked about this very much. Alex Lindsay, what makes the book work for you?
It depends. So the one thing I will say is that, there's a lot of different opinions about these kinds of production books. When I build them myself, I put everybody on a need-to-know basis. I don't send everybody all the information for everything. So there's some people, like my core producers, that would have the entire book. But usually what happens is we build a core doc that has, like, here's all the links. You go to it online, and here's all the links that you need. And if you click on them, they'll show you the call sheet. They'll show you and our call sheets have weather, and they have, when you're supposed to show up. And we also put in things like where to park. Oftentimes in venues that we have, you can't park where the venue is. So we tell you, this is where you want to park, or there's going to be a bus coming from this location. You need to be here at these times. And those are all kinds of like logistical things. We want to tell people when the meals are. We want to tell people general run of show. So we have usually some kind of timeline, and that timeline is usually a series of rows that are going to show people like what each department is doing in those timeframes, on that, in that pathway. Obviously the contacts of and then of course other things in our books that we don't necessarily share with everyone is satellite transmission, uplinks, a lot of the other, signal flows. All of those things are in the book somewhere, but we don't necessarily share all of that with everyone as we work through it. So it depends on what you want to. In the most basic version, it's a call sheet to run a show, some basic logistical information, and then you decide who gets what after that.
Courtney?
Yeah, it depends largely on the type of production that you're doing. If you're doing a commercial production, it'd be different than if you're doing a theatrical film, or if you're doing a television show or a live stream. The contents are different. On a theatrical production, you're going to see you'll have a production book that has the script, of course, in it, and a breakdown, and the shooting schedule, and the cast and crew names and contacts, usually through agents for the cast, and crew numbers, etc. If you need to contact the department heads, are usually all in that production book. If you're doing a television commercial, let's say, you'll have storyboards that will be in there. So you may have two sets of storyboards. You may have the agency storyboards, and you may have the director's storyboards. So you'll have a set of boards in there that show you what the agency's looking for, and then maybe some hand-drawn storyboards from the director to show what kind of coverage he wants to get for that particular day. You'll have a lot of times a breakdown of what props are needed on what days, etc. If that's a multi-day shoot, or what each department needs to make sure that they bring for that particular production day. So that's a lot of important information that is nice to have on there, that so everyone in their individual departments can get a list, can look in that production book and see what their department needs to provide and show up with for that day. So the sound department needs to know, how many characters have lines? Do I need wireless mics? How many contacts do I need for agency personnel? How many agency personnel are going to be there and ask for a contact to listen? How much do I need monitoring for parents? Are we working with kids? A lot of that stuff should be in that production role, that production book. And the more information you can put in there, the better. A lot of people are paranoid these days about putting contact information in there, so you may have to limit telephone numbers and just have email addresses, which is what seems to be de rigueur these days.
Yeah, I'm going through an interesting thing right now with the audiobook that I'm doing, because most of my cast is under 40, a lot of them under 30. And so they're just not paper oriented. So I'm in the midst of trying to build a lot of things in the virtual space that is going to become essentially this single source of truth book for them. And, I've got a cadre that are very Discord oriented. I've got some people who are still on email. It's getting more and more complex. And Alex brought up something on the show a while back called Airtable. And I'm just trying to find a generic database to replace. I don't want to build this out of FileMaker because that's too complicated. And their old product that was simpler called Bento is, I think, gone. So I'm looking for something simple and discrete that I can build out these various things to communicate with my crews. But I'm just feeling more and more like paper is probably going to be the least useful thing. So we talk about the book, but for me now, the book sits in the cloud, and you have to build strategies for making it accessible to the various constituencies. And boy, there's a lot of difference out there in what people are comfortable using. My 2 cents. Chris Fenwick?
We email a PDF of a call sheet out, and it's infuriating to me because if I have to call somebody on that call sheet, there's no way I'm gonna go find the email. Good luck. I open up the document and I can't click on the phone number. Maybe is there a way to do that in the PDF? I can't click on the phone number and make a call. I have to memorize 10 numbers and toggle over to my phone.
There is.
Jason's laughing at me.
You make the URL TEL : and then the full phone number, and that's a URL.
What is it?
That makes it the link. TEL for telephone.
Oh, my. And then you type the phone number, and it'll show up as a blue clickable link in the.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? This last 5 years has not been a total waste. Thank you, guys.
Welcome to Office Hours, where we strive for practical improvements in your life every day. And we just hit one for Chris, and I love
Bill,
it.
I mean, you're spot on. I mean, paper is stupid, literally stupid. But I think I would love a great, and I love the idea of having the weather on there, Alex, a great app that's called, call sheet. What is it?
Yeah,
What's it called?
We've thought about it. We've talked about it. Like we've talked about something that would do that, and the idea is to make it more dynamic. So that people have different permissions and they see what they need to see when they open it up on their mobile.
That would be
device
glorious.
Because I think part of it is also for me is that one of the reasons I like to generate the call sheets is that I like to omit my phone number. so I don't particularly like giving crews my phone number. And so, but one of the things that was notorious in our call sheets for Pixel Core was that there'd be my name and then there'd be no contact information. Like it would just be I'm on the call sheet, but I'm not going to broadcast it.
Why don't we make this an Office Hours project? Let's make an app called Call Sheet, and we'll make it the greatest thing ever.
Greatest thing ever. I think we should have meetings about it.
It's called Call Sheet :
GTE.
The greatest thing ever.
The greatest thing ever, yes.
And then we'll have the revenue, paid, and it'll make it super cheap, but it'll support Office Hours.
I think it'd be great. I think that the problem with that is that when you deal with database stuff, as soon as you pull it one little thread, the whole thing.
Right. SQL linking.
Got to make it good.
Everything is tied to everything.
GDPR becomes like, as soon as you ask for any contact information, you're like, oh, I don't want to play anymore. It's like, like the data, but it would be great. It would be great.
It was an interesting discussion. Next question.
The next one comes in from Kigali, Rwanda. Shima Herve asks, hey, Office Hours team, UCI cycling broadcasts look amazing. What tech is used to transmit the live feeds from motorbikes and helicopters, and how is the signal kept stable over long moving routes? Thanks.
This will be interesting because I've seen that as well and wondered, how do they do that when these bikes are going through the hills and things like that? Alex,
so when we do races, there's a lot of different ways that we manage it. So in some cases, we have key locations that are. So we have hubs where we know it's going to be an interesting shot, and so those are actually sometimes wired, like literally we're running fiber for miles to go out there to make sure that I absolutely have that space, and then I'm using a wireless transmission from wherever that point is, and that wireless transmission may go a couple hundred feet, so that we can make it work. Other things that we use are microwave, especially from our helicopters and stuff like that. We use bonded cellular to get those. It's going to add some latency, but usually when you're cutting really far away, no one's going to notice if you're a couple seconds off. So you can, it doesn't matter. And so live use, and then all kinds of other bonded solutions. I think we use natural point for some of these. And so you have a couple of those bonded locations there as well. In some cases, on some really large ones, we've had a handful of satellite trucks like hidden in there that are uplinking stuff that we can pull back down because we have the budget and it's a really big space, and there wasn't a solid place to do cellular. So it depends on where you're doing this as well. So as cellular starts to break down, you have to start to get much more creative about how you're going to do it. In some cases, we're using point-to-point microwave. So we have a wireless station. That a wireless receiver that's sitting in one place. Then we have a little tower that goes up, and it's looking point to point to back to our home station, and it can go up to about 10 miles. So it can fire back to us in that. And in some cases, I haven't done it, but we've worked with folks that have bridged those, and so it actually is how your cellular works. It's not like we created it, and so we bounce them, a couple miles to get back to us, and the latency is. almost zero, like to do that. So it just depends on the budget. It also depends on, what kind of cellular, where you are, how many hills, all those things. But it's usually a mixture of all of those transmission systems, and it depends again how big the space is as well.
Yeah, I think also remember there's a director's pod somewhere and they're seeing all these feeds, and if something breaks up, they don't go there. I mean, if you've got a poor shot, we seldom see them now because they have options. And also some things can be rolled in. So you might have a tracking behind the bicycle, talking to somebody. That shot may be live, but it also may have come from 15 or 20 minutes ahead of time where they captured it, edited it, and brought it back.
To Bill's point, when you watch behind the scenes of a live show, you realize that so much of it is packaged to make it a better show. You watch like an NFL game, and a lot of those like interviews when they ran out, they're not interviewing them right before the half starts. like that. Like that's not how that worked. Like that. So like it looks like, oh, we're running out. Let's just run up to the coach and ask him right before the kickoff. That's not what happened.
No.
So
coaches don't like that. I bet
that we that's handled by a tool called an EVS. So it is like store and playback. For those types of things.
Yeah. Their goal is to put on a great show. So they do any technique possible to make the show fascinating and keep you hooked on it because that's their job. Next question.
Next one comes in from Paul Wallus in Austin, Texas. Paul asks, the GoPro MAX2 just entered the 360 camera market. With numbers like 8K, 10-bit, 300 megabits per second, twist and go replaceable lenses be enough to ensure success? And he has a link to it.
Jason Bass is going to start us off with his ideas. Jason?
No, flatly no. I'm not impressed by 300 megabits per second straight away. But more importantly, this is a pretty competitive market, and you've got to wake up pretty early to beat DJI. I think their 360 camera is pretty good. There are a lot of competitors here, so no, nothing ensures success.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, and the Insta360, I think, is probably what they're looking at as their primary competition here. One of the cool things about it that I think is a feature that they've kind of thought through is this being able to take the lens cover and being able to replace it and replace the lenses. For a lot of action cameras, that's something that you think about a lot. Being like, where do I put this? I have a little one here. This is the Insta360 actually, and you worry about like what's going to happen to the lenses, and so you think through that. And so being able to know that you can replace some of those particles is useful.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I was wondering why the replaceable lenses would be an advantage, because with a 360 camera, you're shooting a wide-angle point of view in all directions, so you can then, in post-production, choose your angle of view. So why would you need different lenses? I guess
no, you're not swapping lenses. You are replacing them after they hit a rock. It's not because it limits what you do with your camera. So if you're doing action cameras with 360, there's a lot of places I don't take my thetas or don't take this camera because I'm afraid I'm going to hit you're constant. Like, I don't know. I've been shooting 360 now for 30 years. And I can tell you the thing that you worry about all the time is lenses. Like, you're just like, what's going to, and where you shoot and how you shoot, all you're thinking about is scratching the lens. Because once you scratch the lens, the lens is dead, the camera's dead, whatever. And so being able to swap those out and having covers is useful.
And I'm wondering if the reason GoPro has waited this long to get into the 360 market is because maybe the patent's expired.
It's not new. No, they've been in it for a long time. This is like the second or third version of what they've done. So GoPro has had other versions. I bought the first. I think I have the first version over there. so I have it somewhere. It's a little box. They have this kind of box view. So they've been building these for quite some time. Yeah, there was a patent.
Single camera, or are you talking
single
about
camera? Okay. Two lenses. There was a patent. I can't think of the name of the company that kind of ruined everything for everyone for 14 years, and they never really. iPix. Those guys, ruined everything for everyone for a long time. And then as soon as that patent ended, suddenly all these cameras started. If you're wondering why these cameras all started coming out, it's because there was a patent that was holding us all back, and then it ended. And we were finally able to live a life again.
Next question.
Next one comes in from someone named Michael in Houston. Not a question, but on the limitations of the USDZ backgrounds, they need to be small. A user streaming these has to download the USDZ model as part of the video's metadata, and it slows down the video's startup time in the VisionPro app.
Well, we've got a couple of Vision Pro owners who are going to weigh in on this. Jason Beisch.
So, okay, I think you're talking about the immersive backgrounds that Apple loads in, and there's a reason that they are very much a part of the app. It doesn't really slow down load if you do it correctly as a developer. You end up with USDZ, and then it is there's a lower quality version, and then you could basically chunk in a higher version.
I think he's talking about the backgrounds. So on the Vision Pro, on the immersive videos, there's a background that you can add that's a USDZ background. And it theoretically can have geometry in it, but most of the time it's a low resolution or lower resolution.
Oh, this is just the surface of Mars stuff. Okay.
Well, no, it's not surface of Mars. This is a feature that isn't used very often right now, but a lot of people are playing with it, which is that it's a USDZ 3D model, and it can be put. So right now, if you shoot the front of your hemisphere, you have the two, the immersive stereo in front of you. Right now, it just goes to black. You look over and you see black. But there is a USDZ option where you can have a hemisphere in the background and put some kind of logo or other things back there and have it blend into you can theoretically create a blend between your hemisphere and the 360. And so, or the 180-degree video. So it makes it a more seamless experience so it doesn't go to black. And so this is specifically for immersive video experiences. It's not used that heavily because of these limitations. It takes a little longer to load in. It's only 2D. It is only a hemisphere. So there's a bunch of things that are only. But it's really exciting. This is something that the first person I heard talk about this was actually, I was having dinner with a guy named John Carmack. And so he was talking about the fact that, we don't look back very far. He goes, you really just want video on the front and something that makes you feel like you're there on the back. And so, it's been thought of for 4 or 5, 5 or 6 years, or at least. But this is the first piece of it, and I don't think that it's the last version of this. It does have its limitations, but it's something I'm pretty excited about. It's actually why I bought this camera. So the reason I have this camera is because I couldn't get my old Thetas to work. I just couldn't get them to turn on, like they're old. So I bought a new one so that I can shoot these environments for that purpose. So we'll hopefully show more of that in the future.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. Jeff asks, my StreamDeck Plus only shows the wallpaper despite trying different cables, including an OWC USB4 at 40 gigabits per second, active optical cable. What am I missing?
Jason Beisch, can you help?
Yeah, the proof is in the recipe. The optical cable doesn't carry enough voltage, so the StreamDeck isn't making a full connection. You need a simple USB-C cable, and you'll be fine.
Guy Cochran? Guy is frozen or off stage, so we're going to have to punt on that. And next question.
Okay, moving along. Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. When using YouTube's mute audio option to resolve copyright issue, do they re-render the video or just the audio track? Finding conflicting answers online.
Alex, do you know?
I don't know for sure. I believe they re-render it. So I believe it's a re-render because it's much easier for them to manage in real time. So I believe that it gets re-rendered. That's why it's not off immediately and then suddenly it's off. And then when you resolve it, I don't think it turns on instantly. So I think that it does get re-rendered.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York has a question. He says, I'm digitizing vinyl records using my X32 and sending the audio into GarageBand. Any special EQing or audio gremlins I should be aware of?
Alex Lindsay.
I guess what I would say is the thing that I would worry about is, Rick, there's nothing to do immediately. What you want to do is get it as clean as you can. So make sure that the record is as clean as possible. Everything is as clean. The biggest problem you're gonna have is pops, like pops and everything else. Everything else is gonna kind of fit in, but you shouldn't need to add a lot of equalization. You'll do that in playback somewhere in the future, but I wouldn't do it to the actual tracks.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, we don't know what your audio chain is to get it to digital, but make sure the preamp that you're using and connecting up to your analog record player or your turntable, if you're using a magnetic cartridge, has the correct RIAA filter on the magnetic preamps in there, because there is a RIAA filter record that is used by the recording industry to filter analog records, and make sure that that is it's usually contained within the preamp. So just make sure you're not bypassing that RIAA filter, because then things could sound funny.
Absolutely. One bit of advice I'd give you is don't just do it based on the technology. Listen to what's coming out. Do a test run first and listen critically as you can. Just make sure that you're getting the maximum response on the low end, in the mids, and the highs. Once you've dialed that to the best that you can make it, then you've got a reproducible format to do all the rest of the records. But I made a mistake once upon a time when I was digitizing some records, and I just relied on the fact that I saw a nice big waveform and things like that. And there were things about that sound I didn't like. So my 2 cents. Next question.
Comes in from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. Speaking of leaving the Adobe ecosystem, is there a Lightroom substitute that the panelists use?
Alex Lindsay.
I have to admit that after Aperture, I just never really recovered, and I just use photos. It does enough of what I needed to do. I don't want to be tied in. I don't want to tie all my pictures into Adobe's ecosystem. And I don't have something else that I'm happy with. I really loved Aperture, and I used it all day, but I haven't ever really recovered from that, and I just never really went to something else. And I will say that the gift that I have every day is that my phone, because it's sitting in photos, all my photos are there, grabs pictures of my family and puts it under the clock every day, and it is the best thing that I have on my phone. It's just this awesome, because I take so many photos of my family and in all these environments and all these things, and it just keeps on bringing them up. And because 95% of my photos are on my phone, or that I took with my phone, it's really easy to just use photos. So I've not moved on.
Jason Beish.
I've got to back up Alex here. I adore Lightroom. I used Lightroom for 20 years, as hard as it could be used. I knew the keystrokes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And today I use photos because I don't know. I don't shoot as much with my DSLR. And when I do, I find that Lightroom is simply not worth the lift. There are still certainly things that I do with the Adobe raw media engine in Photoshop to manipulate things that I shoot on my DSLRs. But again, this just comes back to the number of things that you end up having to do in order to compromise. And in this case, Lightroom's just not worth the lift anymore.
Yeah, I moved from my in Freakwood. I used to shoot a lot of still photos, and I needed a lot of post-processing for them, so I was a pretty heavy Lightroom user. I switched out of that. I drifted around for a while. I ended up on something that I'm not going to recommend. It does what I needed to do. A couple of times a year when I do Comic-Con and things like that, I use Luminar, which is one of the newer kind of AI-infused models. I don't think anybody who is a big Lightroom user who wants specific control will be happy with this, because it has a lot of automated tools. But for what I'm doing, I need to get photos out quickly that are pretty good, but these people are not looking for making billboards, so they don't need precision control. I find that fast, simple, and it works on both iOS and my main computers pretty well, because it's modern code. So for whatever that's worth. Next question.
Next one comes in from JJ McKenna in Scabo, California. Which pre- and post-production Linux-based software packages are in use today and common at environments like ILM in the Presidio?
Alex?
Maya. Maya is pretty common. So I think that's probably the most common one that you'll see. And the interesting thing about Maya was being created when I was at ILM. And, there was this mixture of Alias and Wavefront. Alias, Wavefront, they merged and they started working on this. And what they did is they came to ILM and a couple other production houses, and they said, well, we want to build the ultimate 3D package. what do you want? And ILM didn't want a bunch of features. What they wanted was extensibility. They wanted to be able to write everything and be able to create their own things. And to be honest, to have their own proprietary ways of doing things that not everybody could have. So having all the features wasn't what they were interested in. Having something that was big and heavy and able to be scripted was what they cared about. And so that's what they built. And that's why Maya is so difficult for the average person to just jump into and use, because it's not really built for them. It's really built for these big studios to make that to make those things happen and to be able to customize it. So when you say, "Oh, I'm going to buy Maya," and you think you're going to do the next next Star Wars, the amount of extensibility that sits inside of that app is pretty profound. But that's probably the most common app on Linux in most visual effects houses.
Courtney Gooden.
And Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but RenderMan is still probably pretty prominent over at ILM.
I don't think so. I don't think they use
also
RenderMan. I don't think they. No, I think that
Material X Llama as well for.
I mean, I could be wrong. Like I haven't been to ILM for a long time. I haven't talked to someone in the rendering pipeline for a long time. But I think RenderMan was. I mean, if there was a lot of other rendering tools that they were using, and I don't know if RenderMan is still part of that pipeline. It's no longer a business for Pixar made RenderMan thinking like that was something that was paying for things while they were figuring out how to do shows. Once they started making movies, I think they spent less time on it, and it may still be part of the pipeline. I'm not clear.
Next question.
All right. Rajan Chandil in Los Angeles, California asked, fascinating use of the iPhone as an E&G rig with lots of angst about it online. Your opinion? And he has a link to it stored.
Yeah, I wish I'd seen this earlier. I would have taken a look. It's an Instagram link. Alex, did you see this?
I am trying to see it. This is the...
Okay.
Oh, here it is. Let's pop this up. It's hard to watch Instagram on the web. Anyway, so here you can see the iPhone here with a big old lens. So people are excited or not excited. I think that it's something that people get excited about doing. Like and I'm guilty of this. I do a lot of things just to do them. Like I don't know if they're really useful or not. I'm working on something right now that I'm doing. It's probably not particularly useful, but it's really fun, theoretically with phones. But I think that someone saw 28 years later, and they've seen these beast rigs or B scripts, and they wanted to play with it. And someone who has access to the field got a hold of it and put it on a tripod. So that's what you end up with when that happens. Is it going to be a good replacement for all the other cameras? Probably not. Like, once you start putting these huge lenses on it, that you're kind of like, I don't understand why you're using a phone. So I use the phone a lot for production, and there's a lot of things I do with it. But once I start adding big lenses, I feel like there's a little bit of a "what am I doing here" kind of thing. Like why don't I just use a real camera at that point? If I'm going to put a $70,000 lens on a rig, I might as well put a real camera on the thing. I know people are going to say, "The iPhone is a real camera." Okay, it's kind of but I think that's I think the camera, it's the most powerful production device right now out there, but it's not a replacement for these larger broadcast cameras.
Courtney Gooden?
Yeah, I agree. Unless you're using the ability to live stream it somewhere, there's really it's bigger than a regular DSLR. Which when you think of the iPhone, it has an integrated lens that you can't remove, and so any additional lens is a secondary lens you're going to be putting in front of that lens. Is it really limits the amount of versatility you have in capturing an image. So I don't know why you do it if it's going to end up less light and less portable than just the phone itself.
I agree with everything that's been said, although it's really surprising to me that this year's iPhone 17 announcement was Genlock and OpenGate and things like that, that kind of, if they keep going down this path, that those may end up being more and more use, but probably, I don't know anybody who would want to give up the controls of a studio-type camera in a stadium for something like those rigs, and not now. Next question.
Next one comes in from Noonan, Georgia. Tony Mobley asks, Alex, has Keynote been updated with new bells and whistles with OS 26?
Have you had time to take a look? And I've been super busy.
I don't think that it's been updated yet, unless it just happened and I haven't seen and it hasn't rolled out. The last update for Keynote was 5 months ago, and I don't think that there's been anything new. Usually, this is a time. It's a little odd. Usually, this is a time when we do see an update to Keynote and to Motion and Final Cut, and over the next couple weeks. But I don't. the Final Cut and Motion stuff got pushed off into the summit got pushed into the spring. And I think it's partially because there's an immersive event that's happening about the same time, at Apple, that's probably pushing the Final Cut and Motion one into the future. So,
Jason, did you want to weigh in?
I actually looked for this when I started playing around with macOS 26, and as of yesterday, I haven't seen anything at all feature-wise that's different. There's quite a bit of change in Liquid Glass, but feature-wise, nothing.
That's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for being a part of Office Hours, for helping to support us by your presence, and for everything else that happens. Thanks to all of you who had questions into the show. Without you, we don't have a show. So we appreciate that greatly. Thanks to the panelists for coming and freely investing their time in helping everybody else learn more about this industry. And finally, the back-end crew, the magnificent back-end crew, who we are dependent upon every day to help us get the signal out to you. We thank each and every one of those. The Talak Traversal today, 32,000 miles, 51,000 kilometers. That is 253 million bananas for sale. And it's Tuesday, which I think means we have a special show tonight. So check on your links for that. Thanks for watching. I just realized I never looked at the daily schedule. Is that special show happening tonight? I think it is.
I do think so. I have to admit, I've been so focused on the special we did last night.
Yes.
I haven't looked up. And paid attention to anything.
You were immersed in that immersive.
I was immersed in the immersive. Yeah,
immersed in the immersive. Yeah,
exactly. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.